Hello and welcome to another World of Warships video. I'm Org and this time we are looking at the USS Langley, which at the moment is the first aircraft carrier in the game. It sits at tier 4 coming off the US cruiser line. And what should I say about this? I suppose the first thing to say is that as a ship it's actually really bad. As you see, it's a pretty huge target. It only has a combat capacity of 33,700. I say only, that's the same as a very heavy cruiser or a very light battleship. Its big downside though, it's got no armour. So like I've been shooting at this with high explosives, and high explosives has penetrated the armour and done full damage inside. And it's only got a 16 knots I think actually top speed, which is the slowest ship in the game. The one big advantage that it has is that it can carry, well, 30 aircraft, of which it can launch 18 at a time, 3 lots of 6. And this is at tier 4, where very few ships, I should say, have any decent anti-aircraft guns. So you can actually do a lot of damage with this ship. Or at least the aircraft on the ship, as long as nobody comes close to you, because you won't survive their fire and you can't run away. As you see, it's completely different to the other ship classes, because you play in this top-down mode for the most part, or at least I do, you don't have to. And it's really just lining up attacks, focus fire, that kind of thing. For the Langley, there are 3 ways that you can set up your aircraft. You can either fly it with a single squadron of fighters and a single squadron of torpedo bombers, and they've got the one which I prefer, which is 2 fighter squadrons and 1 torpedo bomber squadron, and the way which most people prefer, which is 2 torpedo bombers, 1 fighter. I prefer going fighter heavy just because I like gaining air superiority. It's not very rewarding, you don't get a lot of points for shooting on an enemy aircraft, but I enjoy it. You see here I've managed to find a enemy fighter squadron isolated, and our entire team's fighter force ganged up on it. And I got 2 kills, my carrier friend got another 1 there. And now I've sent my fighters off after some of the enemy's torpedo bombers. Well, my torpedo bombers are trying to track down an enemy battleship. I suppose that's the other thing about going out fighter heavy like I do, is that I don't really have to worry about finding the enemy's aircraft carriers, because usually they're not going to have a lot in the way of aircraft. What you see me doing here is I'm redirecting my fighters to intercept, because they don't normally, they just fly directly at the enemy aircraft, which is, well, it's basically never the optimal path.
Our team has taken the lead.
And I've spotted a battleship, so let's line up a torpedo run. I'm using auto aim because I actually usually don't pay attention to what my torpedo bombers are doing, and you can manually aim, which I do in the last replay I'm going to show you today. But because I don't really pay attention, I find auto aim's a bit easier for me. Okay, we've caught up with the torpedo bombers, and we've shot down 2 of them. Torpedo bombers have a fair bit of health, but we'll kill them eventually simply because they can't really fight back against us. We're up to 4 of them shot down. And there go our torpedoes on that battleship. Ooh, and that doesn't look very good. It started turning well before I dropped torpedoes, so there's a good chance I can dodge them. We've shot down half those torpedo bombers now. We're going to get 1 hit? No, it got through it. Okay, we shot down all of those torpedo bombers. Did we? We only got 13 though. Oh no, there was another lot of fighters here, so I must have got 1 of them. But anyway, we have got shot down 13 enemy aircraft with our 12 fighters, so they're returning to the ship to reload, as are the torpedo bombers. And I'm just going to use this time to point out that the aircraft carriers are actually the weakest class of ship in the game. And, well, yeah, weakest is fair enough. Is that if you go with the Langley here, with the 2 torpedo bomber loadout, they can do, I can't remember the figure, it's about 10,000 damage max damage per torpedo. They can fire 12 torpedoes at once, so that's 120,000 max damage, which seems like a lot. Then you've got the, I mean, you compare it to something like the Myogi, which has 6 guns, each does about 15,000 damage, comes to, actually I thought they came to about the same damage, so I must be getting something wrong here. No, I think each of these torpedoes only does about 8,000 damage. Maybe even less, 6,000 damage. I'm pretty sure it came to 72,000 damage for this and 60-odd thousand for the Myogi. But the Myogi can basically fire a broadside every 30 seconds, whereas, as you see, I've been talking this whole time, and my torpedo bombers are about halfway back to my aircraft carrier. Which means that basically they get to fire once every 2 minutes. So it doesn't mean that they can do a lot of damage, they just can't do it very often. And then, like I say, the only advantage the aircraft carrier has is that it can strike at the enemies without being in range of their guns. But as you can see, our team left one entire flank open, so I am now struggling to get away while my fighters make short work of these enemy fighters, but they've actually just run out of ammo. But fortunately the enemy carrier player wasn't paying attention and isn't chasing down my fighters, and instead is just kind of flying behind them and letting my guys come into land. I think those friendly fighters just down to the, well, they're in the right of the screen, they're gone now, were also out of ammo. And there you go, the enemy fighters are flying away. I think they'll try and chase down my torpedo bombers, and when my torpedo bombers landed, just as you see them doing there, returned to carrier since the target wasn't there anymore. Just watch all my fighters come into land. Should mention I sent them back earlier, but they still had a bit of ammo left, so I could go and send them after those fighters. Which meant that, well, my 12 fighters got 15 kills in their first sortie. And of course my torpedo bombers did not a lot. And by not a lot I mean they fired 6 torpedoes, all of which missed. What I've done here is I've set my course for my aircraft carrier to go into the centre and try and cap B. Simply because it looks like all the enemy team has come down to, well, our cap basically, or our spawn I should say. So hopefully if I go into the middle there won't be anybody there. Just ordering my planes to take off and setting the torpedo bombers to, well, attack that battleship. And I don't think I need to send them with a fighter escort because there aren't any enemy aircraft around. I mean, I know I've killed a lot of them. We're only up against Langley's in that match, so there'd be a total of 20 fighters on the enemy team since they've got 2 Langleys. And, well, I know I've killed kind of 10 of them at least. Send my fighters on the escorts just at the end, but that's mainly to get them away from my carrier and doing something. And then we spot a torpedo bomber and some enemy fighters, 4 of them. So that would be the guy where I shot down 6 of his fighters and he's only got 4 left. I realise I'm not going to be able to catch those torpedo bombers before they drop their torpedoes, so I set my fighters to intercept them on the way back.
Returning.
And my torpedoes are looking good this time. I think about detaching or sending some of the fighters off to kill the enemy fighters, but so it's not really worth it. Got 2 torpedoes onto that battleship, which wasn't quite enough to sink it though.
The enemy is about
And
to win.
it's easily within firing distance of myself. And my fighters aren't going to make it back in time to hit those torpedo bombers either. And that battleship up there is dead, and we are actually about to lose this game. It was a quick one. Most aircraft carrier games tend to last a really long... Oh, and I just took 6,000 damage and my flight deck's on fire. Which means that, well, my planes can't land for now, but the fire's out now. So hopefully they'll be able to land. And let's just send my fighters after these torpedo bombers, because it basically looks like I'm about to die here. Actually, it's just a case of whether I die first or whether the game ends first. And as I said, this is kind of, well, the one problem with the Langley, it can't run away. So if your team doesn't protect all avenues of advance to you, they're eventually going to get into you. But we caught some more enemy fighters with our 2 squadrons, and outnumbering them 2 to 1, we're going to kill them pretty quickly. at least we should do. It's got a few more, 3 of them now. But the game's going to end. Yep, I'm guessing that's the end of the game. So, well, that was a quick one, but it just kind of shows you how you get, well, air supremacy in this game. I shot down 21 enemy aircraft, and as I said, each of these Langleys only carries 30, so I shot down almost half of the aircraft on the enemy's team. And of course, if I'd have lived a bit longer, or the game had gone on a bit longer, I would have got some more. Actually, no one else really shot down many aircraft. The other Langley got 9, so between the two of us, we did shoot down half the enemy's team, half the enemy team's aircraft. Whereas, as you see there, I shot down 11 torpedo bombers and 10 fighters, and did 2 torpedoes damage. I only did 8,000 damage with them. I only took 6 casualties, so as you saw, I could have gone on a lot longer slaughtering the enemy and preventing them from attacking our ships. One thing that should be mentioned about aircraft carriers is that the tier difference is actually really important. Like, a Langley at tier 4 just can't go up against a Independence at tier 5. It's probably the one class where that's really true. Like a tier 2 destroyer can fight a tier 3 destroyer alright. I mean, a tier 3 one has an advantage, but it's not a huge one. Same goes for battleships and cruisers, but in aircraft carriers, that's just not true. And I'm just going to show you kind of a clip at the start of this game to demonstrate this. I've sent my aircraft north, where there is an enemy fighter squadron coming from a Independence. So I intercept it with my fighters, initially just one squadron, but my second squadron's just here, and we're going to fight it 2 to 1, while I send my torpedo bombers after the enemy's carrier. And so far we shot down, well, our first enemy aircraft there, no, we shot down 2 of them, and so far we have taken 2 losses. Just showing the dogfight here. So despite us outnumbering this guy, 2 to 1, we're losing at about the same rate. But fortunately, our AA guns on our friendly ships actually managed to save us a bit there, but we shot down 4 of the fighters for the loss of 3 of ours. And now we're doing the same with another squadron. We're outnumbering them 2 to 1, and it just kind of disappeared there, which is a bit weird actually. But I shot down 2 more of them, but oh no, there were other fighters came to help, that's why. And here I send my torpedo bombers to attack this aircraft carrier. And I see the enemy fighters coming to intercept, so I just tell them to go dump the torpedoes as quick as they can. And my fighters are rushing to try and defend the bombers. And I've just got to drop the torpedoes. They've already lost 3 aircraft, down to 1 aircraft left. And it's shot down before it can get the torpedoes off. So just like that, we lost 6 of our torpedo bombers. Some of my fighters don't need to go up against these guys, so I pull them back. Especially over the Independence, which has a lot of anti-aircraft guns. Decided to send them after some scout planes, just because they were there, and the scout planes pretty easy to kill. It's got 1 more kill there. And, well, the fighters are coming back. And now that we're away from enemy AA, I decide to have a go at it. But I've only got 7 fighters left against 6 of this enemy aircrafts. Actually no, make that 5 fighters left against 6 enemy fighters. So this isn't going to go well for us.
Airborne.
You see I'm down to 4 fighters, with another 8 back at the carrier for reserves. So even now, if I were to land these guys and send them back out again, I wouldn't be at full strength. Trying to get my torpedo bombers to hit this battleship while we're doing this, but it's not going very well. But my second group manages to escape that fighter squadron, but there's another one on its tail. And well, I've only got 4 torpedo bombers left as well, but they're having a go at it. And the enemy fighters just caught up with my group of fighters. And well, that's dead. So of the 12 fighters and 6 torpedo bombers I sent out on that first run, I only had a single fighter return, so I took, what's that work out to, 17 losses, and I only shot down 8 enemy aircraft and didn't land a single torpedo. And that was just because I can't go up against the Independence's aircraft groups, and its anti-aircraft fire was more than enough to slaughter my torpedo bombers. Well, it's anti-aircraft fire plus its fighter squadron, and my fighter squadrons just can't hold their own against its fighter squadrons, but they still have to fight them because otherwise my torpedo bombers will get slaughtered.
Autopilot mode.
Anyway, this game I've gone out with the more common setup most players use, in that I've only got 1 fighter squadron and 2 torpedo bomber squadrons. And well, as you see, we've got a pretty solid advantage here, at least in terms of numbers of ships.
Ready for takeoff.
Well, yeah, basically we've got a pretty solid advantage. It's going to be very unlikely that we lose this game. And so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of forming my aircraft up, just getting to circle the carrier.
Maintaining present course.
And then I'll set the fighters to escort one of my torpedo groups. But it won't really matter because I'm going to send them both in the same direction.
Airborne. Standing by for
It doesn't matter,
instructions.
I'm going to select all of them at once. I'm going to send them over to A. Since we usually see a bunch of enemy ships, especially battleships, head over this way. I mean, there aren't any battleships in this actual match, but I was hoping maybe a cruiser or two would be over here. It's actually going to be a bit hard because cruisers are quite hard to hit with torpedoes. And I should also say that in this game I was going to use, well, not game, I do only use auto aim. Well, the next match you'll see me using manual aim, which is much more effective than auto aim, but it requires a bit more skill to use. And you'll see I screw it up about half the time. Actually, maybe even more than half the time. I probably screw it up most of the time, to be honest, but I get a few hits. Whereas auto, well, the real big difference between them is that auto aim, your torpedo bombers fire from really, really far out, and they fire in a diverging spread, whereas when you use auto aim, you can kind of select how far away they drop the torpedoes, and they fire in nice straight parallel lines, so you get lots of hits if it hits at all. And of course it's also harder to dodge because it's harder to fit a
Taking
battleship
fire.
between them. I initially send my fighters out to chase down enemy fighters, but they're not coming to intercept me, so instead I'll send them back to escort the bombers,
The enemy team has taken the lead.
and then send the bombers over there, which is actually kind of where I guess the enemy aircraft carriers would be, since they are kind of the people I should be trying to kill at this point. And I was really tempted to send my fighters off to attack those bombers, but I really need to keep my bombers alive since those are my only offensive weapons in this match. And yep, I found an enemy aircraft carrier. So I'm setting up my bombers and I drag it around the circle because I want to try and create a bit of a crossfire so that this aircraft carrier won't be able to dodge both of these torpedo attacks at the same time.
Approaching target.
Don't quite get simultaneous drops, which is what you really want. And it wasn't also ideal because Group 4
We're under
was
attack.
firing torpedoes straight on, which is really easy to dodge. But Group 3s are looking good here. Just watch it from the perspective of my fighters and see if we get 2 hits. And it just dodges a 3rd torpedo there. But 2 hits isn't terrible. It does a fair bit of damage. And well, I reckon now that my bombers have dropped their torpedoes, I can send my fighters off to try and chase down some of these enemy bombers. You can see here one of our carriers has gone off in the opposite direction to the rest of the team, which is now getting pounced upon by, well, basically an entire enemy's team worth of torpedo bombers. But my fighters are, well, they're on their way. They'll be like a minute or so before they arrive though. Well, basically our entire team has gone to A, which is good because we're going to cap it, but the enemy team has capped B and C. So at the moment it seems like we're basically doing everything we can to lose this match, or at least giving the enemy a chance. Now, I know these torpedo bombers have all dropped their torpedoes, and you can see it's not going to be fun for this aircraft carrier. Takes 2 hits from that one, and 1, 2, 2 from there, but it's still floating, which is the main thing. And yeah, these torpedo bombers, they've already dropped their torpedoes, so they're not really a priority target, but I'll still be able to kill them pretty easily, I think. You can see down the bottom there, one of my torpedo bomber squadrons is landing, so I'll be able to get them back up and out again soon enough. Okay, we're spotting one of the enemy cruisers, because those are its shells flying underneath my aircraft. As you can see, it takes 30 seconds to rearm our torpedo bombers. So to say, the more I think about it, the more comparable what the system I've got here is to a battleship, as in, you know, 2 torpedo bomber squadrons, that's about the same theoretical max damage as a broadside of battleship shells. It takes 30 seconds to reload. The only real difference is that it takes about a minute to fly from the target to the aircraft carrier and back, so I can only fire, well, one broadside every 2.5 minutes, whereas they can do it every 30 seconds. But, as I say, I get to hang back and no one has to shoot at me. Or at least no one has to come within range of, or I don't have to come within range of the enemy's guns if I don't want to. Well, it's not quite that, because I can't run away. If I play smart I won't, but sometimes it's unavoidable. So I'm setting up on this enemy cruiser now. Basically the same thing as what you saw me do earlier. And my fighters are coming to land. Again, they haven't quite run out of ammo, but they're pretty low, so I figure they might as well head back. Plus all the enemy bombers are, I saw them all heading back to land, so they're not going to do much for the next 2 minutes or so. I'm just trying to line up on this cruiser. And it looks like the number 4 will be in there first. Or number 4 squadron, I should say. And here comes some enemy fighters, but we'll just see number 4 the long way around, and number 3 should get the quick way. And I'm just trying to adjust to get it set up, but I don't quite get a chance to adjust the number 4, so it ends up firing its torpedoes in a way that's basically the enemy's going to be able to dodge them. You see Group 3 dropped it from miles away, so we get 1 hit on the bow, does 5,000 damage. And well, this enemy cruiser looks like it's basically going to be able to outrun the rest of them. And there's an enemy scout plane, and there are their fighters. So I send my fighter to attack theirs, but yeah, those torpedoes aren't going to hit. I kind of decide it's not really worth it in a minute or two. Think about heading them north to chase the enemy torpedo bombers, but it'll take me ages to get there, and by the time I get there they're probably all gone. So instead I just send them to hang out a bit and do some scouting more than anything. Well, we basically know where all the enemy is except for 1 aircraft carrier, which I think might be sitting around C.
The enemy is about to win.
So I kind of send my fighters over there just to, well, in that general direction, just to see what they can see. And there's not actually a lot for them to do now anyway. Well, that enemy aircraft carrier's just died, so those 2 torpedo bomber squadrons are just going to circle there for, well, until the end of the game. And we've actually pulled it back, so we're actually winning now. We hold 2 cap points. One of my torpedo squadrons is back up. Or, well, it's taking off now. And the other one will take off in 5 seconds once the number 3 squadrons, or Group 3, is up in the air. And at this point I realise that basically I'm going to have to send my fighters after this cruiser. But that's not going to happen while those fighters are escorting it. So I send my fighters to attack that cruiser, and then get my torpedo bombers to do, well, you know, my pretty standard attack pattern here. And I can't see the fighters, well there they are, but you know they're around there somewhere. And this fight isn't great for us. It's, well, 6 on 6, we're both Langleys. We'll probably take, well, the exact equal casualties, everything being equal, which it is. Well, I say that, but, you know, RNG, nothing ever is quite as it should be.
Engaging enemy. We're under attack.
Some torpedoes launched, they're all launched. But that's another thing with auto aim, sometimes it just launches them at very odd angles. And, well, they both launched way far ahead of that cruiser. I might get lucky. No, I don't think I will here. But as I said, cruisers are hard to hit because they're so manoeuvrable. If that had been a battleship, I would have got 1 or 2 hits, even though most of them would have gone way in front of it. And let's have a look at the fighter fight. We're winning. We've got 2 fighters left to their 1. But we're out of ammo. And looks like they are too. So, well, 5 kills for 4 losses. I suppose we have to count that as a victory. And, well, that's the game won. So, I don't know, 3 torpedo hits, 11 aircraft shot down. And that's kind of why I think aircraft carriers are kind of just a weak class. It's just very reliant on getting their torpedoes to hit, which isn't all that guaranteed. And it's also why I tend to prefer focusing on preventing the enemy aircraft carriers from doing damage rather than doing damage myself, because I actually just feel kind of more effective. Because the thing is, well, I say they're not very effective and that they don't do a lot of damage, but they can actually really influence the game just because people have to dodge your torpedoes, and especially if you're in a battleship, that can delay you from being where you want to be for 30 seconds, possibly even a minute, if you have to go away from the bombers and then turn around a bit and lose a lot of speed, and you have to turn around some more to get yourself back in the right direction. But so they are not exactly powerful against battleships. They are very annoying, and they do stop your team from performing effectively. So preventing enemy aircraft carriers actually does a lot of good for your own, especially the battleships, for your own ships. But maybe the aircraft carriers just don't have a lot of damage output. Anyway, this is the last game I want to show you. I know it's been a bit of a long video, but aircraft carrier games tend to go for a long time. They tend to be quite slow paced as well, because you have to fly to them and you fly back and whatever. It's also kind of why I prefer fighters, because there's usually a bit more you can do, because they can attack a couple of squadrons before they have to return to base. So I'm kind of just piling up my aircraft on that battleship, and then I decide to send them off to just this hill. They're going to do a bit of scouting more than anything. I did leave my fighters behind to escort the battle. No, they weren't. Blah. Don't worry about that. They were escorting my torpedo bombers. Saying, yeah, whatever. So we see a bunch of enemy ships are heading off to the, well, their right, our left, and there are also a bunch of enemy aircraft over there. But since I'm in a bomber heavy loadout, I am not going to go fight them if I can avoid it. Instead, I am looking for enemy ships. Oh, but our friendly fighters are taking a beating in this game. Should mention that this game should have been pretty easy for us, at least in aviation terms, because we have an independence on our team. But the independence player didn't really use their fighters to our advantage, as in they didn't actually order them to attack any enemy aircraft, they just let them defend themselves, which is a lot less effective than attacking. And what you see me doing here is I'm trying to line up my torpedo bombers for an attack on this battleship. You see, basically hold Alt, you get this little, well, attack guideline really I should say, and the direction it faces is entirely dependent on how the aircraft came in. As you see, I kind of botched that one up, as I'm pretty sure I aimed both of these way too far behind the battleship.
The enemy team has taken the lead.
But I got lucky. I got really lucky actually. 5 torpedo hits, took away about half of its health. And while that was happening, my fighters went and took on some enemy torpedo bombers. shot down 4 of them. And 5 of them are gone. And there we go, we shot down torpedo bombers, and the enemy fighters are coming, but I am running away. But it looks like they're going to catch me, so instead I fly towards this battleship. It's a Congo, which has a lot of anti-aircraft guns. I ordered my torpedo bombers there as well, because I know those anti-aircraft guns will essentially tear up these enemy fighters in no time at all. But the enemy fighters, they're not having any of it, and they fly away after they shot down one of my bombers.
Returning to ship. Returning to ship.
And that's like a really good way of just using your allies, because that Congo had no idea he was helping me out then. Like, it was very focused on destroying that enemy battleship I'd torpedo, or finishing it off I should say. But it doesn't actually have to actively cooperate with me since AA guns are automatic. And really what you really want to look for instead of battleships is Japanese cruisers, not Japanese, American cruisers, because they have absolutely awesome AA guns. As do aircraft carriers and, well, battleships. And I suppose Japanese cruisers would be number 4 on my list of ships to fly to, which actually is very low because all that's left are the destroyers, which have very weak anti-aircraft guns. But anyway, just looking at my torpedo bombers on the deck getting rearmed, and my second squadron of torpedo bombers has just come into land as well, and my fighters after them.
Ready for
But my
takeoff.
fight's going to be delayed because my number 4 flight is taking off, and so my fighters come in, realise they can't land, and they do a loop and then they land. But I'm going to keep my number 4 squadron hanging around until number 3's back up in the air as well, and then they can go and attack together. Since, well, this time I've done what the aircraft carrier did in the last game, and that I'm on the right of our spawn, and, well, I'm basically the rightmost ship on our team, and there are 2 enemy cruisers coming from the right.
The enemy team is
3
taking the
enemy
lead.
cruisers. And in a second or two, there's going to be a 4th enemy cruiser. Fortunately, I've got 2 friendly cruisers coming back to help, but they're obviously going to need a bit of help from me, that is.
Airborne.
Okay, all my bombers are up, and we can see there are kind of 4 cruisers, and 2 of them are very close together. So my plan is to try and torpedo those 2, well, they're both St. Louis class cruisers, because if I miss one, there's a good chance that I'll hit the other, which just makes sense to me. And we can see my allies just sunk that Omaha class cruiser, but we lost a friendly cruiser in exchange. So it's now 3-on-1 in terms of cruisers, and I'm running away at my 15.5 knot, which it must be my top speed. It's probably why I couldn't remember whether it was 15 or 16. And lining up our torpedo bombers, getting them in a good position to attack, holding Alt and letting go. And this one's coming in, it's aiming for the second ship in line.
Standing by for instructions. Over.
And there goes the torpedoes in. Got 1 hit on the first ship,
Returning to
and
ship.
another 1 on the second. But my second lot of torpedoes aimed way too far behind, which is a shame. As I say, I screw them up pretty often when I'm doing auto aim, manual aim. But when these short-range battleship, they can be very effective, just because you're all travelling in parallel. So usually when you get 1 hit, you can get a lot more. Okay, this isn't actually looking that good for us. We've taken B in the centre, but the enemies hold A and C, and as you can see they've come right around our right flank hard, and they're also pushing around our left flank where there's also nothing to stop them because all of our ships are right in the middle. So I was kind of just thinking where I should move, and for now I actually just keep running away from the ships behind me since they are the biggest threat. Seeing my fighters after these last 2 enemy torpedo bombers, obviously that guy's taken a fair few kills, or had a fair few of the bombers shot down. Not from me, I've only shot down 5 aircraft. And well, I figure these bombers are coming after that Congo, so I send my fighters to cover the Congo, since that's obviously a destination. But the bombers don't actually make it there. Well, I send my fighters to cover that cruiser while I get my bombers back up in the air and look for something we can kill. Some fighters are heading down, but they're not really a priority target for us at the moment. And I'm thinking this cruiser down here is going to be our next target. Simply because it's the closest to me and therefore the most threatening to me. And found some torpedo bombers. Send my fighters off after them. And my fighters, well no, they're probably going after that battleship, so my fighters probably won't get there in time to intercept. But they'll catch them on the way down, I think. Just trying to line up my runs here. And I think I've aimed both of those way too close to the ship. Yep, way too close, it's already in the zone. Oh well, screwed those ones up horribly, and we get no hits. And my fighters are taking heavy damage because they are fighting 2 squadrons of enemy fighters. And they die quickly. And I'm not sure if I've actually got any fighters to replace them. And I've obviously got at least some.
The enemy is about
But
to
none
win.
in reserve now, whereas I've still got 2 torpedo bombers in reserve. Which is good because, you know, I've got 2 fighters left and I'm sending them off against these 2 squadrons of enemy fighters. And well, I've just lost a squadron of torpedo bombers. Which means that I am very understrength in terms of aircraft here. And we're only fighting Langleys, but these guys have both gone with fighter heavy loadouts. And our independents just didn't kill very many of them, at least not its fighters. But you see its anti-aircraft guns going there and tearing up the enemy fighters. Luckily for us, the fighters were willing to fight over the enemy aircraft carrier. And, well, now the enemy ships to our left have come around, and I'm heading straight for them. But I get my bombers up, and, well, I figure I'd better try and get out of here, but I've basically got no chance. And the only place to go is right into the middle of the map. Took some hits there, but they did very little damage. I've got one of my bomber squadrons up, the other one's up. I've actually still got 12 bombers left, so they haven't taken quite as many losses as I'd thought. But enemy fighters have arrived, so I've sent my bombers towards the friendly Independence because I know it's got a lot of anti-aircraft guns, and they're basically the only things that can save my torpedo bombers at this point.
Our team has taken the lead.
And all this time I'm being shot at by an enemy cruiser, but luckily it's just not doing a lot of damage. Just lost 6 torpedo bombers, but my other 6 have managed to make it away. And Group 3 is back up in the air, but it consists of a single aircraft. So I sent it to fire its torpedo at this cruiser. I just do it auto aim because I don't really care, it's only 1 torpedo, it doesn't make a lot of difference either way. And my allies' AA fire was tearing up those enemy fighters, but wasn't enough to win the game for us. As you see, I came middling, we lost, but I still did a fair bit of damage. And you can see the enemy Langleys between them shot down 40 aircraft, and our entire team only had 57. So They were really pulling their weight that game. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.